All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Nothing for Nothing Leaves Nothing podcast. I'm your host, Lewis, and today we have another one of those serious topics. And today we're talking about suicide. Let's talk about it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. So like I said, today's topic, we're going to be talking about suicide. So this is not an easy topic to cover because it's a very multifaceted topic. A lot of people have different viewpoints on it, and a lot of times there's a lack of understanding. So with this podcast, what I want to do is just provide some insight from my own perspective on the topic, things that I've experienced, things I've dealt with, and how I dealt with those situations when they came up. So starting off, what I want to say is, for all those that listen to this podcast, if you are somebody that is experiencing a situation or going through a time where you have feelings or you've had thoughts of suicide, that you can always pick up your phone and dial 988, which is the suicide and crisis lifeline. So know that you're never alone when you're going through a situation. Know that you may not be the only one that is going through that situation or dealing with a situation at that time. Even though at that particular moment you may feel isolated, you may feel alone, you're never alone. For the reason that you're never alone is you have God and Jesus Christ on your side, if you are a believer, and I am. So that's something that I have leaned on in the past when I've gone through my situations, and it's something that I always hold true and try to stay true to. So when you talk about suicide, if you don't know, suicide is pretty much a situation where someone decides to end their own life. Right. So when you think about that and you think about the thought process that goes into that, a lot of times people, mainly the people close to that person that is maybe either attempted suicide or somebody that attempted it and actually ended up taking their life, people tend to feel angry, you feel upset, you feel sad, you get into a stage of mourning, obviously because you're mourning the loss of a friend or a loved one, and a lot of times you end up in, people end up in a state of confusion. And a lot of times that confusion comes from the fact that people can see somebody every day, talk to them, have interactions, and never know a person was dealing with something very dark and something very deep, that people that if they're not, I would say extra attentive, because even trying to be extra attentive, you can still miss things, you can still miss signs. And next thing you know, the person, you wake up the next morning and the person, you found out the person that's taken their life. So my personal experience when it comes to suicide is pretty deep. And it's deep in the sense of, like I talked about on previous podcasts, I'm a Navy veteran, and it's one thing that, in the military that you can, not all the time, but depending on, to say you choose your rate, choose your fate, depending on what job field that you decide to go into, you might be in a situation where you might experience either someone trying to commit suicide or someone actually going through the process and actually completing it and taking their own life. So your thought process it changes a little bit. I mean, you get training and you get awareness on it. Like they have suicide prevention month. You have, organizations out there, for veterans and first responders. Like for veterans, you have, Wounded Warrior Project. Another one that's tied into things for veterans is I Got Your Six, which is, a big one for the military community and first responders. So there are things out there that are there to assist and to help folks. And it's not just military, but, just in general for the overall public. And suicide a lot of times is tied to mental health. A lot of times, when they're going back and reviewing a situation where somebody committed suicide, the first thing they look at is, what the person was dealing with in their life, what difficulties they were going through, what situations were they in, and, ultimately trying to figure out and dissect and try to get into the person's mindset to understand, why they did what they did. And from my experience, I worked in the inpatient, mental health ward for about a year and a half. And, it was one of the first assignments I had when I, joined the Navy. I was stationed at a naval hospital, and that was the first place I worked. And while I was there, we had, just a variety of different patients and people going through different things. And with the folks that were in situations where a lot of them had attempted to commit suicide, they were unsuccessful, and, they ended up, being brought in for treatment. And one of the duties was, you did one-on-ones. So a one-on-one is, you sit down with a person and you pretty much just having a one-on-one conversation with them. They had a guide that we would use to go through, just kind of checking in on them throughout the day, see how the day was going. But for me, one of the things that is kind of my thing is just conversating with individuals. So I had the script. After a while, I kind of memorized it, but then I would just sit down and have conversations with folks. And a lot of times when you're having a conversation with somebody, you see that you can have similarities in things that you experience. That's kind of how life goes when, you're doing certain things. You come across people that have experienced some similar things to you. Maybe not, verbatim identical, but, similarities. So when you're talking to a patient and like you would talk to, like when I would talk to a patient and you're having a conversation with them, and one of the reasons that they were there was because, they had attempted suicide. So obviously that would be a question, how are you feeling today? What's going on? Where's your head at? Things of that nature. And you have conversations with folks and you trying to get an understanding of getting at why. And it's never a clear-cut answer as to, well, this is the reason why. A lot of times what I saw was you would see folks that had a variety of situations that came about and it became a compound effect. So, you have a negative situation on top of another negative situation on top of another negative situation. And people get to a point where they feel like they have no way out or there's no release in sight for them. So when you think about that, like, think about being in a situation where you feel stuck and walls are closing in and you just can't escape. So the only way they feel like they can escape is to take their own life. And when you're having those conversations, it makes you look at yourself and it makes you think, because when you talk about similarities in situations, you think like, man, like, am I having an issue? Am I in the process of, kind of slipping into that hole and slipping into that abyss to where I might feel like I have no other way out but to take my own life? And for me, after having those conversations, it gave me, cause for pause to think about some of my situations and just think about different aspects of my life at that time. But I was always good. Now, fast forward to past that, I came across some individuals while I was in the military. They became friends of mine and, close friends. And dealing with suicide of a friend is never an easy thing. First time I experienced it was actually while I was at the hospital. I had moved from working in inpatient, working in inpatient health, like working in DPH, which is Department of Mental Health, and I was working in, I believe it was like an admin section, pretty much, which was helping with guys that were deploying and coming back from deployment. And one of the sellers I came across, Dan, cool dude, like simple, just kind of chill guy, kind of kept to himself, made jokes here and there. So we hit it off because I was, one of the things that we hit off was because we were both a little bit bigger than norm. So we used to go work out together all the time. And as time went on, we would catch up, work out, see each other at work and stuff like that. And that was kind of our thing. So it became, pretty cool acquaintance, stuff like that. Would, kind of chat with him, catch up with him on the weekends, when I could or whatever, when we were staying in the barracks. And the time came to where I was getting ready to, PCS, which is transfer from the hospital. And he was transferring around the same time. So we had chatted. We had, been chatting for a while. And like I said, never knew nothing was going on. Nothing was wrong. So we chatting. I remember the last time I talked to him, we were at work. We was cracking jokes about something, I remember. And I was like, hey, man, I'm going to hit the gym later. You going to roll? He was like, yeah, bro, I'll catch up with you. I'll see you then. It's like, cool. So end of the day comes, packing up my stuff. Something came up and I was like, oh, man, I'm not going to be able to make it to the gym. So I hit him, I was like, hey, bro, I'm not going to be able to make it to the gym. Rain check for tomorrow. He was like, all right, cool, bro, no worries. Catch up with you tomorrow. Last time I talked to the guy. Next morning, get to work, we check in. And, so like I said, it's an admin section. So it's like, folks usually get in, you get to, go to your desk, start getting checked in, pulling up your stuff, checking emails, whatever. But this particular morning, we came in and I believe it was our master chief that was in charge of the section came up and he was like, he kind of pulled everybody in the conference room. He was like, hey, we need to get you guys in here, and they wouldn't say what was going on. Now, this is one of those situations where you kind of get a gut punch, and I'll explain why I was a gut punch. So we all get in the conference room in there, petty officer stuff's in there. So we're in there, talking, trying to figure out, man, what's going on, man? What's the deal with this? So they came in and they told us, it was like, hey, last night, this is what happened. This is what the situation was. Blah, blah. So, and then everybody just kind of, faces just kind of hit the floor, right? You kind of like, what? Like, so what happened was this particular individual, he went to his barracks. He had a weapon, a gun, and he put the gun to the side of his head and pulled the trigger. So he, went to, he took his own life. Now, obviously, I'm not mentioning his name, stuff like that, out of, respect for him, respect for his family. So, it's one of those where if the folks that were there at the time, come across this podcast, they will know who it is. But, yeah, man, it was a trip. So they was explaining to us what happened. Like, hey, he attempted, to take his life. And it was a gut punch. Because, like, the whole time, everybody's in this conference room. And we're looking around trying to figure out what's going on. None of us realized that he wasn't in the room. So you're sitting there and you're like, man, this is messed up. Right? Like the fact that we were all trying to figure out what was going on. Nobody realized he wasn't there. So that situation was rough. It was real rough. And the reason was more rough is because obviously, after things happen, details and stuff start coming out. But I say it was rough in a sense because, like I said, we didn't notice that he was in the room. And then when they told us exactly what happened and broke it down to us, it was pretty rough. The initial gunshot didn't kill him. So they rushed him to the emergency room, tried to work on him, and then that's where he passed. So we did have a ceremony for him. His family stuff had a ceremony for him at the hospital. And then, rumor mills start, right? Like something like that happened, everyone start talking. And they came out, like NCIS, same as on TV, they came out, did an investigation, and they found out that he was actually being bullied, right? And that was just a trip to me to hear, because it was like, what? Like, for real? Like, that's what was going on? And that was part of the reason that, they believe contributed to him, end up taking his life. So that was the first situation. Then, man, it's crazy. So you move on from that, and this was, like I said, that was a gut punch. For me, I'm not going to sit here and say that by any stretch of the means that I'm the most mentally strong individual. I try to be as best I can, but I went through a situation when my grandmother passed, and that was one of the times where I was like, man, I don't want to be here. So that was a situation that first time it came up where I had thoughts. And it wasn't an easy time or situation to deal with, just for the simple fact being because, like, anytime I talk with my grandma, and it's been a while since, like, I would say I talked about her and got emotional, and I'm getting there right now, so bear with me, I'm sorry. Like, man, that woman was the epitome of special. And I had got to the point where I was able to reestablish a relationship with her when I moved to Virginia. And for a long time, I felt like it was kind of like isolated, like they don't want me around, all that kind of stuff. But, once I got there, the treatment that I felt I was missing from her, or that love and affection I felt I was missing from her, I got tenfold. So at that point, there was nothing and not anything that if she asked me to do, it didn't get done, no matter what it was. Pretty handy. So a lot of times, most of the things she would ask me to do would be, helping her with putting stuff up in the house and things of that nature. And the biggest thing that I ended up missing once she passed was, like, just being able to have a conversation with her. Like, there's something that when you have a grandparent, and a lot of people that have grandparents understand this, like I know my cousins do, that just to be able to sit down and have a conversation with somebody completely open, completely free, and them to give you, like, the real. If you were wrong, she was going to tell you was wrong. Even if you were right, she might not definitively outright say you were right, but she would give you something to think about and to revisit. So when she passed, I felt like a piece of me was completely gone, and I didn't know what to do. I was at a loss. It was a struggle, and there were a few times, like, after that, where I was like, man, I don't know how I'm gonna do it. Like, I just want to go be with my granny. Like, just kick her with her one more time, sit next to her while she on the computer playing Mahjong, drinking her sweet tea. Just those little things. Have a bad day, at work, stop out of the house, talk to her, just to kind of, she just was that light. So when she passed, I felt like that light had been taken away, like I was, like, empty. And it took a while to get past that, to deal with that and process it. And a lot of praying and, talking with, cousins and family members and stuff like that. Not directly, and I never told them that, that's what my struggle was. It was more so just from the standpoint of, mommy's going on Miss Granny, and working through that. So I say that if you're an individual that's, dealing with a loss or dealing with a situation where you feel kind of by yourself and feel isolated, don't keep to yourself. Reach out, connect with folks, try to, do things that will, pull you out of that hole. Yeah, I mean, that's the advice I can give, man. I mean, like, lean on those folks around you. Like, if you're having an issue, let somebody know. Don't, stay closed off and feel like nobody's going to understand or nobody's going to be able to see your perspective or your viewpoint. And reach out and talk to somebody, whether it's a pastor, a family member, a friend. If you need to call a hotline or something just to chat with somebody, don't let yourself, kind of sit there and stay stuck in that mental state. A lot of times you see in the world now where mental health is kind of in a big push and a big thing going on in the world, and people see folks that might be a celebrity or somebody famous or whatever, but you see that your mental can be something that can be very, very fragile. And if you don't equip yourself with the right tools, like my tool is praying, whatever that tool might be for another individual, lean on that tool. But for me, it's praying, staying connected to God and leaning on him when, things seem like they just getting out of hand and you have no control. Release the control of him and let him guide you through the storm. But when you see stuff like that, it's one of those things where, like, there was a skateboarder that was at the Olympic Games recently, and he didn't win gold. And then he talked about how he was so dead set, like, man, I just want to do it. I want to do it. And he didn't do it. And how much of a taxing and a strain on his mental that was. And he could have stayed in a dark place, but he leaned on friends, family, people around him to help pull him out of that rut, to say, look, like, yeah, you was competing for something that didn't happen, but it's not the end of the world. That one setback or that one bad situation doesn't define you. It doesn't make you less than who you are with all the things and, blessings and stuff that you have. And he talked about that, like, yeah, man, you just got to lean on that stuff and pull yourself out. And I thought that was a powerful thing, because in most situations in today's world, when people end up in that situation, they end up in a real dark spot. And sometimes they don't bounce back as quick. It takes them twice as long. And if you're somebody that's around a person that's going through a situation where they're struggling with mental health, or they're feeling like they're slipping away and slipping into a dark spot, your best bet is, as best as you can, because you can't force somebody to do anything, is let them know that they're not by themselves, and let them know that you are there to support them any way you can. And any way you can, it might be just sitting there having a conversation with them, taking them out, giving them some extra time, whatever that may be. Whatever your strength and asset could be to that person, lean on it and provide it to them as best you can. Because the last thing you want to happen is something happen to them, and then a lot of times when those things happen, people end up in a very bad guilt trip of feeling like, I didn't do enough. How did I not know? Why did I not see it? And a lot of that stuff is, man, like, some things you can't see. Like, they have breakdowns for, these are the signs that to look for. Like, a person's giving away all their stuff. A person goes from being super sad to all of a sudden they're super happy. Like, everything's cool. And, you're looking at those signs about things. One of the things that they talk about with that is, it's like when a person goes from being super depressed and then all of a sudden they're super happy, but they're giving away a bunch of stuff. And some people do it outright. Some people do it subtly, like a little bit here, a little bit there, to the point where they feel like they've dispersed everything that they wanted to disperse. And now they've made peace with the fact that they're going to take their own life. And that's where the mood switch comes from, being super sad and depressed to now they're like, man, I'm good. Everything's rocking and rolling. And then boom, you turn around the next day and they don't take their life. So with those signs, try to be as mindful of them as you can, and try to pay attention, I guess is a way to put it. But at the same time, like I said, you can't. Sometimes it's just hard to see, like really hard to see. So that brings me to next situation that I experienced. So another friend of mine, super close dude. Me and this dude were super tight, and he was just a solid. He was a solid brother, like legit brother. And he had situations that stemmed from the things that he dealt with and experienced while he was in, and he was still active duty when he and yeah, man. This one, uh, this one stung a little extra, and the reason it stung extra is because when you connect with folks and you have a bond with them, and you know some of the struggles and things that they've gone through and situations that they have had, and all you can do is, extend a hand to be a brother to them, try to help them navigate whatever situation they're dealing with and what's going on. And yeah, man, this one was rough too. So I had another brother of mine, Navy brother. He that ended up taking his life. And I remember when I got the phone call. Another one of my buddies called me. He was like, "Yo, bro, he passed." And I was like, "What happened? Like, what's the deal?" And he was like, "Yo, man, he took his life." And I'm like, "What? Are you kidding me?" And he was like, "Nah, man, like, we're reaching out, letting folks know." And man, it hurt. Like, when I say it hurt, it really, really hurt. And the reason it hurt so bad was because he had a daughter, and I can't even put into words the love that dude had for his child. And it was she was, for a long time, she was his rock. So, when he'd go through his struggles and deal with the situations that he was dealing with, I know that was always his, she was always his anchor point. So when I got that call that he had took his life, I was devastated. And I was devastated for, two reasons. One, I had lost a friend, lost a brother. But I was devastated because his daughter now didn't have a dad. And that's not an easy situation to realize. And it was extra for me because having a daughter and knowing that I would do anything to make sure that she's always good. And I've had my struggles with, even since she's been born, with feeling like situations were so bad that I didn't want to be here. But when you sit there and you think about the innocence of your child and what something like that would do to them, it's a hard pill to swallow. And that's what got to be about my buddy taking his life, because knowing that it got so bad for him that despite that love for her that he had, it wasn't enough. And that's one of those things where it's like, it's gut-wrenching. Because when you see somebody interact with their child and see the love and the joy that they have and how much happiness that child can bring a person, and, you know, realizing that it got to a point for him where even his anchor wasn't enough to keep him, it sucks. It really, really sucks. And like I said, man, having a daughter, it's a different breed, man. Like being a girl dad, painting toenails and having tea parties. But man, like, even for me, like I said, now I've had some low points in the past couple of years, and my daughter has been a big anchor to keep me where I need to be. And, you know, one day she might listen to this podcast and hear it, but it's the truth. My little miracle baby. Yeah, man, it's rough. It's a rough thought. But like I said, man, the love I have for my child, like, just to see that little face and see her smile and, you know, to hear her say, "Daddy, I love you," that's enough. It's enough. And it's one of those things, man, where, like, when I see people go through their situations, it's like, you want to help them as best you can and be there for them, and, you know, try to guide them through the wave of any bad situation. And I know for me, you know, reaching out to buddies and, you know, checking in on them, see how they doing. Like, a lot of my Marines, and I checking on them, like, everybody was going on. They're like, "Doc, what's good, man? It's good to hear from you." That gives me peace, because these dudes know, man, like, anything's going on, something's going on in your life, give me a call, bro. I got you. I got your six. Always. And yeah, this one was was a little rough, but I say that you know, losing friends and, you know, people close to you to a situation like suicide, it's never easy. And the one thing that you have to try to guard yourself against is that feeling of like you didn't do enough, or like you weren't there for them like you felt you should be. You know, a lot of times when these situations happen, like I said, it for some, it gets to a point where it gets out of control that they can't even handle it. So when that happens, or if you're around people and you're starting to see the signs, or you're starting to see things a little off, get them a little extra attention. Focus with them, try to keep them active, and just give them that love and pour into them. Let them know that they're not by themselves, they're not alone. And be there to lend a hand as best you can. So I say in closing, thank y'all for listening to the pod. Got a little emotional from me there, but these are the things that, when you talk about certain topics and you get into situations that you experience, emotions are going to come out at times. So, but like I said, I say this to anyone out there that's listening or going through a situation, or if you've lost a friend or family member or someone close to you to suicide, I know it's difficult. I know it hurts. It's not an easy thing to deal with. But I always say use that as motivation to maybe go that extra mile to extend and help somebody. Give somebody words of encouragement. Tell somebody to have a good day. You never know how much those small things that you may feel are very minute can change someone's mind and give someone a different perspective on the outlook on life. So be mindful, be watchful, be attentive as best you can. Understand that it's not your job to fix a person or fix a situation. That's not what we're there for. It sometimes, and I say that because people a lot of times feel like if somebody's dealing with a situation, they have to fix it. They have to change the person. They have to force something. And these are one of those situations where you can't force anything. You can guide and assist, and that's a lot of times just the little bit that a person needs to help get them rolling. Sometimes if it becomes a situation where it's more severe, then, if you felt you need to escalate it within reason. But also remember that you're working off of what the person is giving you. So be mindful of that. And like I said, just be there to assist, man. Give a helping hand. Call your buddies. Check in on your friends. And let the people around you know that they're not alone. And if they're dealing with something, let them know that you're there for them. And give them as much love and care as you can. Because you never want a person to feel like they're alone or isolated. So I say thanks for listening. Like, listen, subscribe. And we'll catch you guys on the next go around. Have a good one.